a new life. Chapter 1. The Last Box. It was nearly midnight when Anna Collins finally carried the last box into her tiny new apartment on the 3rd floor. The stairs creaked with every step, and she felt each one in her lower back. She set the box down in the middle of the living room, exhaled shakily, and looked around. The space was smaller than the photos online had promised. A cracked window overlooked the parking lot behind a Mexican grocery. The kitchen had old laminate countertops with faded blue trim, and the bathroom smelled faintly of bleach and mildew. Still, it was hers, all hers. Anna wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, smearing sweat and a little dust across her cheek. She'd driven over 1,000 miles from Missouri to Oregon in a used Corolla that was missing 2 hubcaps and had a cassette player that only worked when she pounded the dashboard twice. But the car had made it. She had made it. Her phone buzzed. It was her older sister, Caroline. "You sure you don't want me to come up and help you get settled?" she'd texted earlier. Anna knew her sister meant well, but she didn't reply. She didn't want anyone to watch her unpack. She needed this first night alone, to start over without any witnesses. She flipped on the lamp, a cheap brass fixture from a Goodwill store, and sat down cross-legged on the floor. She stared at the box, labeled Kitchen, in thick marker. She'd packed it weeks ago in a haze of fear and adrenaline after deciding to leave everything familiar behind. Now, the fear was slowly dissolving, replaced by something she hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. This is the first day of my new life, she thought, feeling her heartbeat settle. The first day I can breathe. She didn't know exactly what she'd find in Oregon, but she was certain of one thing. It had to be better than what she'd left behind. Chapter 2. The First Morning. Anna woke before dawn to the sound of rain tapping the window. She'd fallen asleep on the floor in a nest of blankets. The air was cool and smelled faintly of wet concrete. She stretched, feeling her shoulders crack. For a moment, she was disoriented. Then she remembered. She wasn't in Missouri anymore. She was in Portland, a city she'd never visited until yesterday. She dug her phone out of a pile of clothes. No new messages. She was both relieved and a little sad. Back home, she'd had people checking in on her constantly. Friends who'd whispered, "You can't really leave him," and neighbors who'd watched her every move. Here, no one knew her. No one expected anything. She brushed her teeth, washed her face, and made instant coffee in her chipped green mug. The bitterness felt perfect. She stood by the window, watching the rain turn the parking lot into a silver lake. When she finished her coffee, she pulled out a small spiry notebook from her purse. At the top of the first page, she'd written a promise to herself. "I will not be afraid to start again." Below that, she began to list what she needed: a job, a grocery store, a library card, a new set of sheets, maybe, eventually, a friend. She tapped the pen against her lip. It felt almost absurd to start over at 34, with nothing but a carload of belongings. But she reminded herself that she wasn't starting from nothing. She was starting from freedom. Chapter 3. Interviews and Introductions. 2 days later, Anna sat in a worn gray chair in the waiting room of a coffee shop called Eclipse Roasters. The owner, a middle-aged woman with silver-streaked hair named Maribel, was reviewing her application. Anna's hands were cold. She flexed her fingers to keep them from shaking. It had been years since she'd worked anywhere outside the house. Back in Missouri, she'd run a small candle business online. But in Portland, she'd need steady paychecks. Maribel emerged from the back, smiling gently. "Anna Collins," she said. Anna stood up, hoping she didn't look too nervous. "Yes, let's talk." Maribel led her to a table near the window. Rain dripped from the awning outside. They spoke for 20 minutes. Maribel asked about her experience, her schedule, whether she minded early mornings. Anna tried to answer steadily, even as her heart pounded. At the end of the conversation, Maribel closed the folder and looked at her kindly. "You seem dependable," she said. "We could use another barista. Can you start Monday?" Anna's throat tightened. "Yes," she said quickly. "Thank you so much." As she walked back to her car, she pressed a hand to her chest. A job. Not much money, but a beginning. A small step in her new life. Chapter 4. Monday Rush. On her first morning at Eclipse Roasters, Anna woke at 4 a.m. She pulled on black jeans and the plain gray t-shirt Maribel had given her. She twisted her hair into a low bun and stood in front of the bathroom mirror, trying to look like someone capable. The shop was warm and smelled of freshly ground beans. Maribel introduced her to Kelsey, a cheerful college student with bright purple hair, and Darren, who had been working there for 3 years. The first hours blurred together, taking orders, learning the register, trying to memorize the drink menu. She fumbled the first few times she steamed milk, but Darren showed her a trick to keep it from bubbling over. By 10 a.m., the shop was packed. She moved automatically, pour, stir, swipe card, smile. She realized she hadn't thought about Missouri, or about the man she'd left behind, for at least an hour. That felt like progress. When the morning rush ended, she stepped into the alley behind the shop to catch her breath. The sky had brightened. Sunlight filtered through the clouds. She tipped her head back and let the cool breeze wash over her face. "I'm really here," she thought. "I'm really doing it." Chapter 5. A place of her own. A week passed, then another. Slowly, the apartment began to feel less like a temporary stop and more like home. Anna hung a few prints she'd picked up at the Saturday market, abstract flowers in blue and gold. She bought a second-hand armchair, carried it up the stairs herself, and placed it by the window. At night, she read novels there until she fell asleep. Every morning before work, she took 10 minutes to write in her spiral notebook. Sometimes it was just a sentence, "I am safe here." Other times, she listed all the little things she was grateful for. The smell of fresh bread from the bakery down the block, the way the rain made the city shine, the polite woman at the library who recommended new books. It wasn't easy. There were nights she woke up gasping, memories of her old life crowding her mind. But each morning, she reminded herself she hadn't run away. She had chosen to begin again. Chapter 6. A New Friend. On a Wednesday afternoon, Anna stayed late to help Kelsey restock the shelves. When they were finished, Kelsey invited her to grab a drink at a small bar nearby. They sat at a corner table with a candle flickering between them. Kelsey talked about her classes at Portland State, her dreams of traveling to Japan. Anna listened, feeling something thaw in her chest. "What about you?" Kelsey asked eventually. "Why'd you come to Portland?" Anna hesitated. She sipped her cider. I needed a new start, she said finally. I was in a relationship that wasn't healthy. Kelsey nodded without prying. Well, she said softly, I'm glad you came here. Anna felt her eyes sting. Me too. When she walked home later that night, the streets were damp and shining. She realized she was smiling. Chapter 7. The Phone Call. By early November, Anna had settled into a rhythm. Early mornings at the coffee shop. Quiet evenings reading or walking through her neighborhood. She was learning the bus routes, the names of the regular customers, the best places to buy fresh produce. One Sunday afternoon, she was reorganizing her pantry when her phone buzzed. The caller ID made her chest tighten. Mom. She let it ring twice before answering. Hi. Anna. Her mother's voice was careful, measured. How are you? I'm okay, Anna said. It was the truth, even if it still surprised her to say it. There was a pause. Your sister said you got a job. I did, Anna said, at a coffee shop. Are you sure you're all right out there alone? Anna swallowed. Yes, she said. I'm sure. Another pause. Then her mother sighed, the way she always did when she wasn't sure what to say. Your father and I just worry about you. I know, Anna said, softer, but this was the right choice. Her mother didn't argue. That, too, felt like progress. After they hung up, Anna leaned against the counter and took a long, steadying breath. She felt the old guilt flicker in her chest. She knew her leaving had caused pain, but she reminded herself again. She had not left to hurt anyone. She had left to save herself. Chapter 8. Thanksgiving. The week of Thanksgiving. Narabelle offered to cover Anna's shifts so she could rest, but Anna didn't want to spend the holiday alone. Instead, she volunteered to help serve dinner at a community center downtown. She spent the afternoon arranging trays of turkey and mashed potatoes, refilling coffee pots, and washing dishes. By the time the meal ended, her arms were aching and her feet were sore. But she felt lighter than she had in years. When she got home, she warmed up a plate of leftovers and sat in her armchair. Outside, the rain tapped gently at the window. She picked up her notebook and wrote, This is what I am grateful for. My safe apartment, my job, the people I've met, the chance to be my own person. As she closed the notebook, she felt something inside her settle. For the first time in a long while, she did not feel alone. Chapter 9. Winter Comes. December arrived with early darkness and cold winds. Anna bought a heavier coat from a thrift store and a pair of bright red gloves she couldn't resist. The holidays were bittersweet. Lights twinkled on every street, and customers at Eclipse Roasters carried in wrapped gifts and spoke about family plans. Sometimes, Anna's heart clenched with a mix of longing and relief. She missed her family, but she did not miss Missouri. One evening, as she walked home through flurries of snow, she felt something shift inside her. The woman who had driven across the country in desperation was no longer the same. She was stronger now, braver. She paused at the corner, watching snow settle on her gloves. She realized she had begun to feel hopeful. A new life wasn't just an escape. It was an opening, a chance. Chapter 10. A Letter. After Christmas, Anna received a letter in her mailbox. The handwriting was unmistakable. Her ex's. Her hands trembled as she carried it inside. She sat at the kitchen table and stared at the envelope for a long time. Part of her wanted to tear it up without reading. Another part needed to know. At last, she opened it carefully. The note inside was short. I don't know why you left without saying goodbye. I hope you're safe. If you ever want to come back, you can. Anna's vision blurred. She closed her eyes, feeling 1,000 memories press at the edges of her mind. Apologies, promises, excuses. The same cycle she had tried to escape so many times. She folded the letter and slid it into a drawer. Then she wrote herself a reminder in her notebook. I will not go back to what hurt me. I deserve peace. Chapter 11. A celebration. On New Year's Eve, Anna worked the evening shift at the coffee shop. The place was quiet, just a few students tapping on laptops. Maribel let her close early. When she stepped outside, fireworks were starting over the river. She pulled her coat tight around her shoulders and walked toward the waterfront. People crowded the bridge, their faces bright with anticipation. Anna found a spot along the railing. She looked up as the sky exploded in color. Red, gold, blue. 100 cheers rose around her. She stood alone among strangers and felt something rise in her chest. Not loneliness, something better. A kind of fierce pride. I made it, she thought. I made it through the hardest year of my life. When the final bursts faded, she walked home smiling. Chapter 12. Spring comes early. By March, the rain began to ease. Small green shoots appeared between cracks in the sidewalk. Anna found herself walking to work with her coat unbuttoned, feeling the first hints of warmth. One Saturday morning, she met Kelsey at the farmer's market. They wandered between stalls of fresh bread and potted herbs. Anna bought a tiny rosemary plant for her windowsill. As they sipped coffee and watched a street musician play guitar, Kelsey turned to her. You look happier, she said. Anna laughed softly. I am, you know, Kelsey said. I was scared when I moved here too. But I think sometimes you have to start over to find out who you really are. Anna nodded. I think you're right. Chapter 13. A new routine. By summer, Anna's life had a steady shape. She worked 5 days a week, saved a little each month, and spent her weekends exploring new parts of the city. Sometimes she walked the long paths in Forest Park, breathing the smell of moss and cedar. Sometimes she took the bus to the bookstore on Hawthorne and lost hours in the aisles. Little by little, she felt her old fears recede. They never vanished completely, but they grew smaller, less powerful. Each day, she proved to herself she could live on her own terms. Chapter 14. The Apartment in Bloom. One afternoon, Anna returned home to find her rosemary plant had sprouted tiny purple flowers. She stood at the window, looking at it in wonder. She thought of all the times she believed she could never grow beyond the life she'd been given. All the moments she'd convinced herself she was stuck. Yet here she was, in a city that had once been a dream, in a life she built with her own hands. She bent to touch the little blooms. I made this happen, she thought. I made this new life. Chapter 15. The call she answered. That evening, her sister called. Anna answered on the first ring. Hey, Caroline said, her voice warm. I was thinking I might come visit, if that's okay. Anna felt her heart lift. I'd love that. They talked for nearly an hour about work, about the city, about all the small things that made up their days. When they hung up, Anna felt a glow of connection she hadn't realized she'd been missing. Chapter 16. The first summer festival. In July, Kelsey convinced Anna to go to the city's summer festival. They ate funnel cake and watched a parade of floats drift past. Music pulsed through the streets, and laughter rose in every direction. At sunset, they sat on the grass, legs stretched in front of them. Kelsey was describing a new class she planned to take in the fall when she paused. "I'm glad we met," she said. "Me too," Anna said, and meant it. Chapter 17. Moving Forward. On the anniversary of her arrival, Anna stood by her window and watched the sunset behind the old grocery store. She thought about the woman she'd been when she carried that first box up the stairs. Scared, exhausted, unsure. She wasn't that woman anymore. In her notebook, she wrote, "1 year later, I am free. I am growing. I am alive." Chapter 18. A Promise. Before she went to bed, Anna set her notebook on the table. She looked around her little apartment. The prints on the walls, the rosemary blooming on the sill, the armchair by the window. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She made herself a promise. No matter what happens, I will never again forget that I am strong enough to begin again. Epilogue: A new life. The next morning, she woke before dawn. She pulled on her red gloves and stepped outside. The air was cool and clean, full of possibility. As she walked down the quiet street toward the coffee shop, she felt the thrill of it, of having chosen herself, of having built something better, of knowing she could keep building. This was her new life, and she was ready for whatever came next.